We've got our first look at the New York Giants unofficial depth chart for Week 1, 2022, plus Leonard Williams restructures. What does it mean? What did the Giants do with the contract? And what happened on the Giants' first day of practice after the long weekend? All that and more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast, coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and it is Wednesday, September 7th. We're midway through the week, and we are inching so close to NFL kickoff 2022. The New York Giants visit the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. Kickoff is at 4:25 p.m. And coming up in the week, later in the week on the Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to get you ready for that matchup with everything you need to know. More on that coming up a little later. Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Brightco Jewelry and Watch Insurance. Brightco brings you comprehensive, fast, and affordable jewelry insurance for as low as $5 per month. Check out your special offer for Locked On listeners and get covered in under 2 minutes at bright.co/locked on. That's bright.co/locked on. All right, Giant fans, we've got a lot to cover on today's show. I mentioned we're going to start off with some depth chart takeaways. Now, the New York Giants released their first unofficial depth chart. Now, this is considered unofficial because it is not signed off on by the coaching staff. It is put together by the Giants public relations staff. But usually there's something to be said for how the depth chart is put together. That doesn't mean that what you see on the depth chart is what's going to happen, but it's certainly worth paying attention to. So there's a few things that I want to talk about with the first edition of the Giants depth chart, unofficial depth chart. Okay, the first thing that I think is on everybody's mind from the offensive side of the ball is who's going to be the starting left guard. Now, head coach Brian Daboll, in his daily press briefing with the media on Tuesday, basically said they're going to try various guys at that spot, that he has an idea who he wants, but he's going to try various guys. Well, on the unofficial depth chart, it is Ben Bredesen who is listed as the starting left guard, backed up by Joshua Ezeudu and newcomer Tyree Phillips. Now, a couple of things about the Bredesen listing that I think is worth mentioning. Number one, Bredesen, as I think a lot of you know, injured his arm. I think it was an elbow injury towards the back end of training camp in the preseason. And there was some question as to where he was with that injury. Well, clearly, when he didn't land on IR to start the season, things sort of pointed in the right direction, that they were looking good and he was going to be fine. But it makes sense, I think, to have Ben Bredesen as the left guard as opposed to Devery Hamilton, who is listed as the third string left tackle, by the way, on this unofficial depth chart, because Bredesen was actually filling in at one point at left guard when Shane Lemieux went down. And here's the other thing, you talk about offensive line, and it's very important for that unit to establish continuity. The quicker, the better. So when you have guys that are coming in like newcomers, such as Jack Anderson, who was listed as the third string right guard, and Phillips, who, as I mentioned, is listed as the backup at right tackle and left guard behind Ezeudu. These are guys that are just now coming in and having to learn the offensive line play, the offensive line calls, all that good stuff. And I want to play for you, or I want to actually read you, I should say, a quote that came out of the press briefings today about the offensive line, because I think this is a dead giveaway that it's definitely going to be Bredesen unless something absolutely out of left field happens. This quote came from quarterback Daniel Jones when speaking about the offensive line and, what they have to do and, all that they have to learn. And, just with anything with offensive line, it's about knowing how to communicate verbally and non-verbally. But let me read you the quote from Daniel Jones. The question was that actually, let me give you some context. Daniel Jones made a comment about how sophisticated the codes are that the offensive linemen have to learn. So what did, he was asked to follow up about that. What did he mean by that? He said, and I quote, yeah, it's a lot for them to remember. Code words and calls they've got to make in certain situations. It takes a lot of practice. One guy has got to be expecting it of the other guys, and he's got to be ready to hear a call and know what to do immediately. We put a lot on those guys' plate, and they do a really good job handling it. It's been impressive, end quote. All right. Now, based on what Jones said there, does that give you guys any indication that maybe the Giants are going to go to Tyree Phillips at this point or Jack Anderson, who they just picked off waivers a few days ago? Probably not. They're going to go with somebody who's been at that spot or who has been with the team at least for, for several weeks. That's someone, Ben Bredesen. All right. Izudu, yes, he's also been with the team, but we don't know where he's at with his injury situation. We will find that out. Actually, today there will be an injury report issued, but Bredesen's a veteran. He's a guy who has been in there, unofficial or not. I would be stunned if Bredesen is not the starting left guard on Sunday. All right. Let's flip over now to the defense. And a big question there was who is going to replace Blake Martinez in the base? Now, this one, folks, this comes with a little wink. And I don't necessarily mean Wink Martindale. The Giants are probably not going to be in their base defense a whole lot this year. When they are, the unofficial depth chart has Tay Crowder listed as the middle linebacker, backed up by Micah McFadden and Carter Coughlin. The will linebacker, which is part of that inside linebacker group, is listed as Austin Calitro as the starter, McFadden, and Cam Brown. Now, what's so significant about this, and why do I say this comes with a little bit of a wink and not Wink Martindale again? Well, Tay Crowder, as we all know, took over for Blake Martinez last year when he went out with the ACL. And he played, not bad, but, you thought maybe he might get upgraded or whatnot. And he probably would have had Darian Beavers not gotten injured. But see, here's the thing. The Giants are not going to be in their base defense probably a whole lot. This Sunday against the Titans, I would imagine that Wink Martindale is probably going to put a lot of heavy personnel in there. Maybe a lot of 3 and 4 defensive linemen. Just really beef it up. I mean, in the past, we've seen from Wink Martindale, we've seen a lot of formations with 2 defensive linemen and sometimes 4 linebackers or 6 defensive backs or 7 defensive backs. The numbers have been funky. I think if you're going to stop Derrick Henry of the Titans, you better put a lot of heavy personnel in there. And I just think that it may not matter who the starters are, because again, in football, starter means whoever starts the very first play of the game. That doesn't mean that the starter is going to play the bulk of the snaps. There's a big difference when you're talking about football starters versus, say, baseball starters. So just something to keep in mind there with regards to that defense. Now, looking at another position real quick, the cornerback spot. We know Aaron Robinson is going to be the right cornerback. Darnay Holmes is going to be the nickel. And Cordell Flott is actually listed as the backup for actually the left cornerback spot, but behind Adoree Jackson, the right cornerback spot, and the nickel. So he is currently the backup with veterans Nick McLeod and Justin Lane filling in behind him for the third string. So kind of interesting there that the rookie who has been with the team, for all throughout training camp, he's ahead of the veterans right now. I don't know that that's going to continue to be the case, but for now, that's how it is. And then the other thing I want to talk about regarding the unofficial depth chart released by the Giants is the return specialists. All right. Now, there was a bit of a mystery as to who might be the return specialist. Well, it looks like mystery solved. The punt returner is going to be Richie James, and the kickoff returner is going to be Gary Brightwell. And backing up Gary Brightwell will be Richie James, and backing up James as the punt returner will be Darnay Holmes. Simple enough, right? Those were the most productive guys in the preseason who made the 53-man roster. So really no surprise there, but I know a lot of people were curious as to who the returners would be. All right, coming up, Leonard Williams' contract gets restructured. The Giants get some cap relief. What does it mean? What did they do? What's the future? What does it mean for the future of the cap? We're going to talk about all that right after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But for those of you who don't know, I am not a big fan of keeping up with the Kardashians. Matter of fact, I still don't understand why they make news. But anyway, there was something recently on YouTube, an old clip, if you will, from an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians that kind of resonated with me. And it was a clip of Kim Kardashian losing one of her $75,000 diamond earrings in the ocean during a vacation. Now, why did it resonate with me? No, not because I own $75,000 earrings. Quite frankly, I can't afford it. And I'm just as happy with my little cubic zirconia earrings that I wear. But what resonated with me is that it's how easy it is to lose jewelry. And when you lose something that's so precious, something that's irreplaceable, such as a wedding ring, a pair of earrings maybe that your mom passes down to you, a necklace, whatever, it could be devastating, all right, especially if it's an expensive item. Well, here's the thing. The folks over at brightco.com make it easy and affordable to cover any jewelry loss you might experience. All it takes is a couple minutes to sign up, which you can do right from your smartphone. And it costs roughly $5 a month for comprehensive insurance on your irreplaceable jewelry. So don't wait. Go ahead, hit them up today at bright.co/lockedon to learn more or to secure your comprehensive coverage policy. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Traina, going over some stuff that happened on Tuesday, the release of the unofficial depth chart. Leonard Williams restructures his contract to give the Giants some salary cap relief, and then still to come on today's show, some concerns and some updates from the practice on Tuesday. Before I get into the Leonard Williams contract restructure, tomorrow we have our all new and expanded crossover show. I will be joined by Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, and we will be breaking down every possible angle you need to know about the Giants and Titans Week 1 matchup down in Nashville. On Friday, I am working towards a live show with the Entertainer. We're going to try and have Traina and Tana Fridays here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So I don't have a time just yet for that because I have to, juggle a schedule around. The Giants have a weird schedule, as I think I told you earlier in the week. So as soon as I have a time for that, I will post that on YouTube in the community forum section if you want to check that out. And I'll also tweet out the details as well so that if you want to come and join in the discussion and bring your questions, you could do that. But it should be a fun show. When I reached out to Tana and asked him if he wanted to do it, he said to me, "Is the Pope Catholic?" So yeah, he's all in, folks. So stand up. The Tana is coming. All right, let's go to the next segment here on the Locked On Giants podcast. The Giants restructured Leonard Williams' contract to clear some cap space. All right, so let's start off of where the Giants were before they did this transaction. According to Over the Cap, the Giants were going to be $6.69 million in the red against the 2022 salary cap. which, by the way, they have until 4 o'clock today to get into compliance with, because the top 51 rule expires at midnight tonight. So that being said, the Giants had to not only clear enough money to erase that deficit, that $6.69 million deficit, but also to give themselves some breathing room for standard practice squad elevations, for replacements, for whatever they need to get through the regular season. So what did they do? Well, they converted $17.88 million of Leonard Williams's $19 million base salary into a signing bonus, and they added a voidable year to the contract. All right. So now what does that mean? Well, $19 million was Leonard Williams's P5 salary or base salary for 2022. And that amount was fully guaranteed. So in order to do any kind of restructure whatsoever, the Giants absolutely had to ensure that Williams got a cash payout of at least $19 million. So that's what's basically happening. They're advancing him $17.88 million of his $19 million guaranteed base salary in the form of a signing bonus. Now, for accounting purposes, that $17.88 million gets prorated over the remaining life of the contract. So it comes out to about $5.96 million in addition to what was already on the books for Leonard Williams. So in terms of cap numbers, Leonard Williams for this year has a cap number of $15.38 million. In 2023, that number shoots up. It goes from, I think, $26 million to $32.26 million. And then in 2024, the voidable year, the contract will be off the books, sort of, or at least the player will be gone. But the remaining proration of the signing bonus that they just converted, $5.96 million, will be on the books. So, it's a move that Joe Schoen didn't want to have to make, but this just goes to show you just how bad the salary cap situation was that Schoen inherited from Dave Gettleman. It's going to be multiple years, folks, until Schoen cleans every last drop of blood off of this mess that was created. All right. And that's really a shame, because the Giants, they're going to be in better shape next year. Is it going to be ideal shape? That's debatable. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But when you still have guys sitting on your books that are no longer on your roster, because they had a voidable year or because they were cut or whatever, that's not really a good thing. You don't want to have a whole lot of them, because that's money. Think about it. $5.96 million, that's money that could be maybe the first year base salary for, I don't know, a quarterback in 2024. So it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's necessary because, like you said, the previous regime totally messed up the cap, and just really, unfortunate that it had to go down that path. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Giants cap future, because I get this a lot from you guys in the form of questions. There are content creators out there who constantly harp on how much space the Giants are going to have next year. All right. For the record, Over the Cap has the Giants with, right now, $55.663 million. Folks, please do yourself a favor. When you see a content creator or anybody really, touting what the Giants are going to have next year, just don't get excited either way, because that number is not a true number. There's going to be a percentage of that number that's going to have to be put aside for the draft class, which we won't know what that is until the final draft order is set and we know how many draft picks the Giants are going to have. There is postseason accounting that always has to be done every year. All right. Player incentives, bonuses that are paid out. There are cap credits that are retrieved because maybe a player didn't reach an incentive. So don't get worked up over what that number is. Seriously, it means nothing right now. The number that you might want to pay attention to is the estimated base salary cap for every single NFL team, which is 225 million. And again, that's estimated according to Over the Cap. We'll find out eventually what the cap space is going to be. The true cap space, I'm talking, the top 51, when the top 51 returns, at the start of the new league year and all that good stuff. But just, again, do yourself a favor. Don't get worked up either way whenever somebody posts how much space the Giants have for 2023, because it is not true space. All right. That's your little PSA from your friendly capologist / reporter for next year. All right. Coming up, we're going to talk about a few things that came out of the Giants Tuesday practice, injury reports, some potential personnel moves, and a lot more. So stay with us. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, planning your fantasy sports or betting action has never been easier when you use Prize Picks. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available for any of the major sporting leagues. Entries can be made in as little as 60 seconds, and it's so easy. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada, and they offer safe and fast withdrawals. So go ahead, download the Prize Picks app today, or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter that promo code. Again, that's LOCKEDON at sign up to get an instant deposit match of up to $100. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Traina. And again, a reminder, tomorrow is our all new and expanded crossover Thursday. Tyler Rowland of LockedOn Titans will join me for the show. We'll bring you everything you need to know about the Giants and Titans this Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. And then on Friday, it's Traina and the Taina. Live show will go for about an hour and a half. Time to be determined. But as soon as I know, I will post it in the community section over on the YouTube channel. So you can find the link to the YouTube channel in the show notes. If you're listening to this, on the audio platforms and you want to pop in and join us for the live show, hopefully we'll see you there. We have a good time with our audience. We take questions, feedback, get a whole community going. So it's a lot of fun. All right. In this final segment, I just want to touch upon a couple of things that went down in the Giants practice on Tuesday. Now, the Giants this week practicing Tuesday, Wednesday. They're off Thursday. They're practicing Friday. Saturday's the travel day. Sunday's the game. Okay, the reason for that, I'm guessing, is because Brian Daboll gave the team a 3-day weekend. They did come in on Monday for a little bit of work for an introduction, but on Tuesday, what was interesting is that Tuesday we had some really bad weather in the New York, New Jersey area. It was rainy. The grass, obviously, up at the Quest Diagnostics Training Center got slick. But Brian Daboll had the players outside practicing in the rain and the conditions. Why? Because according to weather forecasts right now, there's a pretty good chance it's going to rain on Sunday in Nashville. So the thinking is let's get the players used to handling wet balls and, trying to run and cut on slick grass. And yeah, there's a degree of danger with somebody slipping or falling the wrong way. But, this is what you're going to have to do with football. You're going to have to play in the elements. So if you get an opportunity to practice in the elements, then why not? All right. But let's talk about some of the injured guys. Now, the first official injury report isn't going to come out until today. And I will talk about that on the crossover show with Tyler Rowland. But based on what was observed by the reporters on site for the practice, all eyes were on Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari, who head coach Brian Daboll continues to say are day to day. So when he was asked if they were going to go out there and do any work, he said, yeah, they were. Well, the only type of work they really did is basically hand placement and hand shuffling stuff. They didn't really, take part in um, the team drills. If this had been, I think if this had been a date in which they had released a practice participation report, those guys would have been listed as probably limited, but we're talking extremely limited during the part of practice open to the media. So my gut feeling is that those two guys are not going to be ready for week one. I've always thought that to be the case when they were both injured initially, that I thought it was calling it close and being a little too overly optimistic for them to be ready by week one. I still feel that way. So the question now begs is, what do they do if they don't have those two guys? Who are they going to play? Well, you know what? Here's what I think the Giants are going to do. And I think this kind of makes sense. The bread and butter of the Titans offense is running back Derrick Henry. He's just an absolute load to bring down. So if I'm Wink Martindale, I'm playing a lot of heavy packages. And I'm talking defensive linemen, defensive end, guys that weigh, are equal or about equal to Derrick Henry in weight. Guys who are physical. All right. So that being said, who are some of the guys that I think are going to maybe be able to step in for those two edge rushers if they can't go? Well, let's take a look at the old roster here and see who some of the big boys are. So one guy that I think is definitely going to see a lot of time is going to be Jihad Ward. Jihad Ward is listed as 6'5", 287. All right. He's a big dude. And, I've mentioned this before on the show. If you go back to last year when Lorenzo Carter was the strong side linebacker, Lorenzo Carter, I think, was about, I want to say 30 pounds lighter than Jihad Ward. And sometimes against those bigger, more physical backs, didn't have a whole lot of luck. Jihad Ward, I think, is going to match up well if you're putting size against size and brute strength against brute strength with Derrick Henry. So I can definitely see a big role for Jihad Ward in this defense if Ojulari and Thibodeau are not ready to go. Okay, another guy that I think is going to get some game action if Ojulari and Thibodeau are not ready to go. He's currently sitting on the practice squad, but you know what? Size-wise, I think he matches up well with Derrick Henry. And oh, by the way, he just so happened to be one of the most physical outside linebackers the Giants had on the roster last year. Didn't make the 53 this year. He's sitting on the practice squad, but hey, you can call him up for a week and return him back and not have to pass him through waivers. I'm talking about Quincy Roche. I think Quincy Roche has a skill set to match up against Derrick Henry and, just to help corral the guy. I mean, you're not going to stop Derrick Henry. You can only hope to slow him down. And the bigger the bodies you put up front there, the more you flood the lanes and set the edges, the better your chances are of keeping him from wrecking the game. So that's a guy I would keep an eye on. Now, there's one other position group I want to talk about because I'm really not sure how this is going to play out, but I'll mention it anyway. And that's the receiver group. So we know Kenny Golladay should be good to go. We know Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be good to go. Sterling Shepard is told reporters at any rate on Tuesday that he anticipates being ready to go. What about Kadarius Toney, though? Toney, I don't remember the last time he might have gone through a full practice from reports and whatnot. I would still be a little concerned about Toney and if he's ready to go. Now, obviously, we'll see what the practice report tells us. But Toney, dealing with that lower body injury, I think he had I want to say a knee injury during the back part of training camp. So I'm curious to see if he's ready to go. If he's not, who might the Giants call up, if anybody? Let's see. They have, I'm just looking at the practice squad here. For receiver, they could call up maybe Marcus Johnson, who's a little bit bigger of a receiver, 6'1", 204, and who has experience playing in the slot as well as on the outside. I don't think they would call up Khalil Pimpleton, who's also on the practice squad. He's more of a, I guess, a slot guy, 5'9", 172 pounds. So yeah, I think the guy to keep an eye on potentially, if Kadarius Toney isn't ready to go, is Marcus Johnson. Marcus Johnson signed to the practice squad, got the veteran maximum deal, which means the highest amount possible for a veteran as far as weekly salary goes. So that tells you what they think of him if they made him that kind of an offer. So just, some things to keep an eye on. Now, again, we'll keep an eye on the rest of the practice report, see what the injury report looks like, who's in, who's out. But it sounds like if these guys don't practice at all, we could probably forget about them for Sunday. So that's something we will keep an eye on, as well as any other developments that come out of Giants practice. So that's going to do it for us here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Don't forget to check back with us tomorrow. Tyler Rowland of LockedOn Titans joins me for the all new and expanded crossover show brought to you by Prize Picks. So until then, everybody, have a great one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.